So if you picture the misty market town of Whitcomb on a Monday morning, I mean, the sky is just this color of pale gray linen.
Oh, yeah, the perfect gloomy setting.
Right. And the cobblestones are all slick with damp. The town is just barely waking up, but something is already terribly, terribly out of place at St. Michael's Church.
Yes, but not in the way you'd expect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't start with, a shattered window. There's no missing diamond, and there is certainly no dead body in the library.
Right, which is usually the go-to for these things.
Yeah. Most mysteries start with this loud, chaotic disruption of the normal order, right? But this one starts with an old, weather-beaten financial ledger pushed quietly under the heavy oak door of the church.
And just that single note tucked inside.
Yes. Tucked inside the cover is this one cryptic note, and it just reads, "The debt has been paid, but justice has not."
It gives you chills.
It really does, because the most profound mysteries, it turns out, rarely start with a messy crime scene. Sometimes they start with a perfectly respectable man trying desperately to confess to a crime that no one even knows about.
It is the absolute definition of a quiet mystery. I mean, the psychological implications of it are just deafening.
Totally.
We are looking at a story that asks us to examine the very nature of guilt, not through, like, a magnifying glass, but through the lens of a fractured human soul.
And that is exactly what we are going to explore today. We are broadcasting from the little station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas, where timeless stories, old-time radio, great books, and thoughtful conversations still have a home. So welcome to Chesterton Radio.
It's great to be here.
Our mission for this deep dive is to explore a brand new original mystery. It's called Father Brown and the Ledger of Mercy. And, whether you are holding the book right now, having literally just read the final page.
Which is such a great feeling, by the way.
Oh, the best. Or if you are listening to decide if this story is for you, this conversation is custom tailored for your ears.
We do need to establish the ground rules for how we are going to navigate this, though. Because, I mean, a mystery relies heavily on its revelation.
Right. So the spoiler rule is in full effect today.
Very important.
We are going to strictly avoid any major spoilers until a clearly announced spoiler discussion near the very end of our deep dive. You will hear a massive verbal warning from me, giving you plenty of time to pause the player if you want to experience the resolution for yourself first.
Which I strongly, strongly advise. I mean, the emotional weight of the ending is not something you want summarized on a deep dive before you've actually felt it unfold on the page.
Yeah, you really have to experience it. So let's jump straight into that opening atmosphere, because it tells us so much about what kind of story we are inhabiting here. We are at St. Michael's for morning prayer. It is cold. It is raining.
Classic English weather.
Right. And the congregation consists of exactly 6 people.
Just 6.
Yeah, you have Mrs. Briggs, a woman who, firmly believes churches are supposed to be drafty and uncomfortable.
And you all know a Mrs. Briggs.
Yeah, right. There is Henry Wilcox, a retired blacksmith, a school teacher, a widow, a young mother, and a little boy who is completely ignoring the service to just count the stained glass saints on the windows.
I love that detail. It is a meticulously painted scene. Chestertonian narratives always ground the profound in the utterly mundane.
Yeah, it feels so real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the text explicitly notes Father Brown's internal monologue here. He looks at this tiny, shivering congregation and reflects that, modern men, newspaper editors, politicians, philosophers, they all believe that if God speaks, he must shout in thunderstorms and earthquakes.
Right. Big dramatic sign.
Yeah. But Father Brown knows God prefers whispering. He speaks softly enough that you have to become quiet first to hear him.
But I have to push back a little on that as a detective strategy, to be honest.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, if you are a sleuth, isn't relying on, whispers and quiet realities essentially malpractice?
That's a funny way to put it.
I mean, if you ignore the muddy footprints to focus on the spiritual state of the widow in the third pew, aren't you just being a fundamentally bad detective?
Well, if your goal is purely punitive, yes.
Okay, fair.
Right. If your only objective is to hand a neat little file over to Scotland Yard and see a man hanged, then focusing on footprints is the only way to operate.
Right. That's what the police do.
But that brings us to the core difference between Father Brown and, say, the classic Golden Age detectives. He isn't ignoring the physical world. He is acknowledging that the physical world is merely a symptom.
Wow, okay.
The footprint is just the symptom. The disease is the sin.
Oh, I love that. I was actually thinking about this in terms of the big 3. If Sherlock Holmes is a human microscope, magnifying the physical evidence to find the flaw in the criminal's plan.
Right, the ash from the cigar, the mud on the boot.
Exactly. And then Hercule Poirot is a human calculator running all the psychological variables until the equation balances out.
The little gray cells.
Yes. Then Father Brown is basically a human confessional. Holmes wants a conviction. Poirot wants to solve the puzzle. But Father Brown, he wants a conversion.
That is a brilliant distinction. That really hits it on the head. Holmes and Poirot are fundamentally obsessed with the mechanics of the crime. How did the locked door open?
Right.
What exact time did the grandfather clock actually stop? But Father Brown is obsessed with the theology of the crime.
The theology, yeah.
Why did this person's soul fracture in such a way that they felt compelled to lock the door in the first place?
Man, that's good.
What is the spiritual state of the man winding the clock? His investigative toolkit doesn't consist of tweezers and a magnifying glass.
It's so much deeper than that.
Right, it consists of an intimate understanding of sin, conscience, and grace.
And that specific toolkit is immediately put to the test when the peace of that rainy morning is just totally shattered.
Wow.
Not by a gunshot, but by the arrival of Whitcomb's most respectable citizen. Arthur Pembroke just walks into St. Michael's.
We should probably pause here to establish who Arthur Pembroke actually is in the ecosystem of a 1920s English market town, because his status is, vital to the plot.
Good point. Explain this hierarchy to the listener, because today, if we hear a solicitor, we just think of a lawyer in a nice suit.
Right, someone who handles your mortgage.
Yeah, but it meant something a lot heavier back then, didn't it?
Oh, far heavier. Yeah. A wealthy solicitor in a town like Whitcomb was essentially the keeper of the community's secrets. He was the guardian of its stability.
He knew everything about everyone.
Exactly. And add to that, his role as chairman of the Whitcomb Charitable Trust and his position as church warden. This is a man who holds the literal keys to the kingdom's finances.
Wow.
He manages the widow's pensions, the school funds, the property deeds. He is the man everyone else goes to when their lives fall apart.
Which makes it incredibly jarring when this absolute pillar of the community refuses to even sit down in the pew. He just stands rigidly in front of Father Brown and formally confesses to a massive crime.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. He states that 40 years ago, he embezzled nearly 3,000 pounds from the charitable trust.
Which was a sum that would be completely life-altering in that era. It would have ruined the trust entirely.
Yeah, that's a fortune. But then the confession immediately takes a really bizarre turn. Pembroke doesn't ask for help fleeing the country. He doesn't ask for a cover-up.
Nope.
He aggressively insists that he paid every single penny back. With interest. Decades ago.
It's so strange.
It is. He claims nobody suffered any financial loss, the trust survived, and nobody ever even suspected the money was temporarily gone.
Yet he is standing in a freezing cold church demanding to face the consequences. He looks right at the priest and tells him, "Justice demands it."
And Father Brown, using that human confessional toolkit we just talked about, instantly spots the lie.
Oh, immediately.
Not that the theft didn't happen, but that the motivation for confessing is completely manufactured. Father Brown observes that men who have genuinely encountered the grace of mercy rarely speak of justice as if it's like a debt collector banging on the front door. Such a great line.
Right. Pembroke sounds rehearsed. He sounds almost desperate to be punished.
We are looking at a truly fascinating psychological profile here. Pembroke is a man carrying a burden of guilt far longer than God or nature ever intended.
40 years.
40 years. And when Father Brown questions him, asking, who else knew, who helped him hide this massive transaction, Pembroke fiercely insists he did it all entirely alone.
He won't let anyone else take the hit.
He wants total ownership of the sin.
And Father Brown just smiles with this deep, melancholic wisdom and replies, "Human beings are almost incapable of carrying heavy burdens alone. Fishermen cannot hide storms."
That imagery is just beautiful.
I find that such a striking image, yeah. You can hide numbers on a page, but you cannot hide a hurricane happening inside your own chest.
No, Father Brown is diagnosing there is a self-imposed absolute isolation. Pembroke has spent 40 years acting as the warden of his own private penitentiary.
Wow. He built it brick by brick out of his own guilt. And this brings us directly to the profound paradox in the title of the story itself, The Ledger of Mercy.
Actually, I want to challenge this title a little bit. It feels like a complete oxymoron to me.
So,
Well, we need ledgers in society, right? We literally teach children to balance their bank accounts, to pay their debts, to be accountable. So why is applying a ledger to morality framed as such a negative, tragic thing in this story?
it's a great question. It's because a ledger and mercy operate on two entirely incompatible systems of mathematics.
Okay.
A ledger is the ultimate tool of strict, unyielding justice. It exists solely to balance credits and debits. If you take 10 pounds, you must return 10 pounds. It is a completely closed system.
Right, it has to hit zero.
Exactly. Mercy, however, is, by its very definition, an open system. It is unearned, it's unquantifiable, and it's asymmetrical. It is the deliberate suspension of the ledger.
Suspending the ledger, I like that.
So, to create a ledger of mercy means a human being is attempting to quantify the unquantifiable. They are trying to keep track of grace, treating forgiveness like a loan with an interest rate.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's basically like paying off a credit card that has a zero balance for.
Yes.
And you know it has a zero balance, right? But you keep sending the bank checks every single month just because you still feel terribly guilty about the frivolous vacation you put on the card a decade ago.
That is the perfect analogy.
It's just madness. Why would a highly intelligent man like Pembrooke find punishment easier to accept than grace?
Because grace is terrifying to a man who prides himself on control.
Terrifying.
Absolutely. Accepting forgiveness requires total surrender. It demands the vulnerability to look at yourself and say, I made a mess that I am entirely powerless to clean up.
Oh, I see.
If you demand punishment, if you insist on paying the debt yourself through suffering, you get to maintain your pride.
Yeah.
You're basically telling the universe, I broke it, but I am strong enough to fix it.
Right, it's an ego thing.
Exactly. Grace robs you of that pride. It says, you can't fix it, but you are loved anyway and the debt is canceled. For a self-reliant, respectable church warden, that kind of helpless vulnerability feels like death.
Wow. Think about that for a second, listener. Apply that to your own life, you know? What are the old ledgers you are keeping on your own mental bookshelf?
We all have them.
We really do. Are you holding on to records of old embarrassments or mistakes you made in your 20s, or even sins you confessed years ago, but you still pull them down to read through them and beat yourself up?
It's exhausting.
The story is holding up a mirror and showing us that the most impenetrable prisons aren't made of iron bars. They're the ones we build for ourselves when we just refuse to let the ledger be closed.
But Pembroke's internal prison is about to be violently breached. The walls are coming down, not from the inside, but from an external threat.
Oh, yeah. That's sniper.
Right. His confession wasn't a spontaneous crisis of conscience. It was triggered by a sniper in the shadows.
The blackmail. Pembroke pulls out a heavy old brass key engraved with the initials of the charitable trust, along with a note he found sitting on his private desk in his locked home.
Which is terrifying in itself. Someone was in his house.
Exactly. And the note is chilling. It says, "The ledger remembers what men forget." And when Father Brown shows Pembroke the actual physical leather ledger that was slipped under the church door that morning, Pembroke looks like he's seen a ghost.
He is genuinely horrified.
He really believed that book was buried forever.
Father Brown's logic pivots beautifully here, though. He looks at this terrified solicitor and realizes that the mystery has fundamentally shifted.
The parameters changed.
Totally. The question is no longer about missing money. The money was replaced 40 years ago. The real mystery is this. Why is someone meticulously orchestrating events to make a 40-year-old wound bleed in public?
Right. It's the shift from private, agonizing guilt to public, consuming scandal. And this author perfectly captures the horrifying mechanics of a small-town rumor mill.
Oh, the gossip in this town.
It's incredible. By noon on Monday, the entire village of Witchcombe is just buzzing. They don't have a single fact, but they have infinite confidence in the rumor.
We often think of viral outrage as this modern invention of social media, right? Like Twitter or whatever. But this chapter proves the psychological machinery has always been exactly the same.
Human nature doesn't change.
It doesn't. The velocity of gossip in a closed community is a terrifying force of nature.
The way the narrative tracks the rumor is just brilliant. It starts in the marketplace, hops over to the butcher, wanders through the draper's shop, hits the post office line, and finally settles in the back room of the local pub.
A very natural progression for a rumor.
And every single person who repeats it contradicts the person before them. Like, he stole millions. No, it was thousands. Scotland Yard is already here. They can't arrest him. He bought the judge.
It just snowballs.
It's like watching a modern group chat spiral completely out of control, but, you know, in tweed suits.
And that leads to a masterclass interaction between Father Brown and the local greengrocer, Mrs. Henshaw. She is practically vibrating behind her counter with the desperate need to interrogate the priest.
She can barely contain herself.
She finally cracks and asks, in this hushed, super dramatic voice, if it's true that Mr. Pembroke admitted to everything.
And Father Brown doesn't take the bait at all. He just looks at her apples and says mildly, "Everything is a remarkably large word."
He completely starves the monster.
He does. And then the text gives us this incredible philosophical observation about the nature of public curiosity. It says that gossip always claims to be on a righteous quest for the truth, but in reality, it is completely indifferent to it.
Indifferent, that's the key.
The exact quote is, "Real truth moved rather slowly. It preferred walking. Rumor had acquired the bicycle."
That is such a good line. It is a profound exploration of reputation versus reality. The public, Mrs. Henshaw, the men in the pub, the postmaster, they're instantly, joyfully ready to reduce Arthur Pembroke's entire complex human existence to a single noun. Embezzler.
Just one word.
Yes. They're entirely blind to the agonizing private repentance and the quiet restitution that has dictated his behavior for 4 decades. They judge the snapshot, completely missing the feature film of his moral life.
I love the sniper analogy we were discussing earlier for these anonymous letters, because usually society frames the anonymous whistleblower as this brave crusader for justice.
Right, like a hero.
But in this story, the anonymity feels deeply malicious. The sender isn't stepping into the town square demanding a trial or seeking healing for the community. They are hiding on a rooftop, taking potshots at a man's soul, basically acting as an unauthorized vigilante bookkeeper.
The spiritual danger of anonymous accusation just cannot be overstated. Open conflict, even when it is brutal, allows for defense.
It allows the conversation.
Yeah, it allows for dialogue.
Right.
It creates a space where reconciliation is at least technically possible because 2 human beings are looking each other in the eye. Anonymous accusations remove the humanity from the equation entirely. They are designed purely for devastation. The author of these notes is dripping information out piece by piece to maximize the psychological torture before the public execution.
And to stop this execution, Father Brown realizes he can't just deal with the rumors, right? He has to find the bedrock of truth. He has to dig into the actual historical math of the charitable trust.
He has to go to the source.
Which means a trip to the archives at the trust's headquarters.
Right. He visits the Georgian house overlooking the river and meets the current secretary, Miss Clara Ellis, who grants him access to the old leather-bound minute books.
And what he finds is actually what he doesn't find.
Exactly.
He is flipping through the yellowed pages from 40 years ago, and he discovers that a single page has been removed. But it wasn't ripped out in a hurried panic. It was expertly surgically sliced out with a very sharp blade.
A detail that completely changes the psychological profile of the act. A torn page implies a desperate criminal trying to hide their tracks while the police bang on the door.
Right, like a chaotic moment.
But a sliced page implies cold, deliberate calculation. It was an act of administration.
Father Brown muses that people usually destroy official documents because they contain dangerous, incriminating truths. But then he suggests a terrifying alternative. He says sometimes documents are destroyed because they contain dangerous kindness.
Dangerous kindness.
I have to pause here because how can kindness possibly be dangerous? That sounds like a total contradiction.
It does, but goodness, when it is entirely stripped of wisdom and truth, can be catastrophic.
Okay, explain that.
Well, if you try to save someone from the consequences of their actions by burying the truth, you don't erase the consequence, you just defer it. And usually you multiply its destructive power over time.
Oh, wow.
Father Brown starts to uncover the specific shape of this dangerous kindness when his investigation takes him to St. Anne's house, the local residence for retired clergy.
He goes to speak with Father Benedict, a man who is nearly 90 years old, practically blind, but whose memory of the parish history is just razor sharp.
Nothing gets past him.
Benedict confirms that he saw the exact same physical ledger 40 years ago. But it wasn't Arthur Pembroke holding it. It was the former rector of the parish, Father Ellison.
And Father Benedict recounts a conversation he had with Ellison that provides the thematic anchor for this entire deep dive. He remembers Father Ellison staring at the ledger and saying, "When accounts refuse to balance, always ask whether someone has entered mercy under the wrong column."
It gives you chills. It really does.
Yeah.
But we need to translate that beautifully poetic line into the practical mechanics of this mystery. What does entering mercy under the wrong column actually mean for a detective?
It means that if you analyze a situation purely through the lens of strict logic and legal facts, and the actions of the people involved make absolutely no sense, you are missing a variable.
Right.
If a man confesses to stealing money, but the bank account's completely full, logic fails.
Wrong.
Why would an innocent man confess?
It doesn't compute.
The missing variable isn't greed, it's sacrifice. An act of mercy has been injected into the timeline, and it breaks all the standard rules of cause and effect. Father Brown knows he isn't looking for a thief anymore. He is looking for a martyr.
To find out who is playing martyr, Father Brown starts collecting the oral history of that fateful week 40 years ago. He tracks down Mrs. Porter, the elderly housekeeper who has been brewing tea for the trust committee for half a century.
And she delivers an explosive piece of the puzzle.
She really does. She vividly recalls the atmosphere of the house the week the money supposedly vanished. She describes it as the week everyone stopped laughing.
So ominous.
But her most crucial observation is about the chairman of the trust at the time, Mr. Harcourt. She says Harcourt didn't look like a man terrified of going to prison. He looked like a man terrified that someone else was going to suffer.
Yes, and she overhears an argument behind the heavy oak doors of the boardroom between Harcourt and Arthur Pembroke.
But it's not a fight over who gets the loot.
No, not at all. They're arguing in these desperate, pleading tones. It sounds like two men trying to physically restrain each other from doing something drastic.
Right.
And then Father Ellison arrives. Mrs. Porter hears the priest's voice cut through the argument, saying, "There are some burdens a man has no right to carry alone."
The complexity of the situation deepens so much when Father Brown visits his next source, Jonathan Reeves. He's the son of the man who served as the trust's treasurer 40 years ago.
Right.
Reeves reveals that the entire committee actually knew the 3,000 pounds were missing. It wasn't a secret to them at all.
Which completely flips the narrative.
But here's the catch. They didn't think Arthur Pembroke stole it.
No.
Why? Because Mr. Harcourt, the chairman of the board, stood up in front of the entire committee, looked them in the eye, and formally declared, "The fault is mine."
A direct, unambiguous confession from the chairman himself.
But wait, Father Brown catches the discrepancy. He asks Reeves, "Did Arthur Pembroke ever confess?" And Reeves says yes. But Pembroke didn't confess to the financial committee. Pembroke went to the church and confessed to Father Ellison.
Right.
But Ellison, bound by his vows and his own moral judgment, refused to repeat a word of it to the board, stating that a man's confession belongs exclusively to God.
So we now have the profound underlying biblical theme of the mystery laid bare on the table. We have two highly respected, seemingly honorable men, Arthur Pembroke and Mr. Harcourt.
Yeah.
A massive sum of money is involved in a scandal, and both men are furiously trying to confess to the exact same crime.
They both want to take the fall.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Father Ellison summarized the danger of this perfectly when he said, "When two men each insist upon carrying the same cross, it is almost certain that one of them has misunderstood Calvary."
I'm going to use an analogy here because it really highlights the arrogance hidden inside their nobility. It's like two people in the front seats of a speeding car that is skidding on the ice.
Okay, I'm with you.
Both of them desperately want to save the other person, right? So they both lunge for the steering wheel at the exact same time, fighting for control. It's a noble instinct, but by fighting over who gets to be the savior, they just guarantee the car is going to flip over the cliff.
That is a fantastic analogy.
Isn't this dual confession thing incredibly arrogant? They are playing savior.
It is the ultimate hubris wrapped in the costume of humility. This is the exact danger of misguided goodness.
Sure.
It's a beautiful human instinct to want to throw yourself on a grenade for your friend.
Sure.
But mankind has a dangerous, deeply ingrained tendency to try and imitate the sacrifice of Christ without possessing the divine authority or the infinite wisdom to actually manage the fallout.
We don't see the big picture.
We really don't. You asked earlier if justice can exist without mercy, and we know it cannot. It just becomes tyranny. But this scene asks the reverse. Can mercy exist without truth?
And the answer is a resounding no. Because mercy without truth just creates a labyrinth of lies. It traps Harcourt, it traps Pembroke, and it traps the entire community in a false narrative. Father Brown realizes the missing money is just the vocabulary of the mystery. The actual story is that someone attempted to save another man's soul through a lie, and the resulting confusion has just festered for 40 years.
And the timeline for solving this confusion abruptly vanishes.
Because the sniper takes their final shot?
Exactly. The local newspaper hits the stands with a screaming headline. Charitable Trust Chairman admits historic embezzlement.
Oh, man.
The article promises that anonymous, irrefutable documentary evidence will be released to the public within days. The blackmailer is forcing a public execution of Pembroke's character.
The stakes are at absolute maximum, which means it is time for us to open the ledger completely. Listener, this is your blaring, neon-flashing warning. We have arrived at the spoiler discussion.
Proceed with caution.
If you have not read Father Brown and the Ledger of Mercy, and you want to experience the emotional impact of the truth for yourself, pause the deep dive right now. Go read it. Take your time. We will be right here waiting to break it down with you when you get back.
We really mean it. Go read it.
Okay, I think we gave him enough time.
All right. If you are still with us, the grace period is over. Let's examine the anatomy of the real crime.
The morning the newspaper drops, Father Brown finds a second note waiting for him. It's highly specific. It says, "Do not ask who took the money. Ask who refused to take it back. If you truly seek justice, visit the old lockkeeper before sunset."
So Father Brown walks out of the village, down to the disused canal, and finds Samuel Hargreaves, the old lockkeeper, just throwing bread to the ducks.
Such a peaceful image for a blackmailer.
Right. And Hargreaves doesn't put up a fight. He immediately confesses he is the sniper, he wrote the letters, he kept the ledger hidden in his floorboards for 4 decades.
And then Hargreaves drops the twist that violently recontextualizes every single thing we thought we knew about the last 40 years. The 3,000 pounds, it was never stolen.
It was illegally invested.
Okay, we need to explain the mechanics of this, because I really need you to explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
I can do that.
If Pembroke took the money, invested it in some venture, made a massive profit, returned the principal, and used the profits to save the trust, who is the victim, why is everybody acting like there's a body buried in the woods?
It comes down to the ironclad laws of fiduciary duty. A charitable trust does not belong to the chairman or the solicitor. The money belongs to the widows who rely on the pension to buy coal and the orphans who rely on it for school.
Okay, that makes sense.
That year, the town suffered a brutal winter and a catastrophic harvest failure. The trust was on the brink of total bankruptcy. They were weeks away from telling the most vulnerable people in the town that they were going to freeze and starve.
Oh, wow. So Pembroke panicked.
He took a calculated illegal risk. He and Harcourt knew of a high-yield, extremely volatile investment opportunity, but the law strictly forbids risking charity funds on volatile markets.
Because if you lose it, it's gone.
Exactly. If the investment failed, the money was gone forever and the widows die.
Yeah.
Pembroke bypassed the committee, took the funds, and rolled the dice.
And he won. The investment succeeded spectacularly. The trust was saved.
But the law does not judge the outcome. It judges the action. The law was broken the second the money was moved. If the authorities found out, someone was going to prison for a very long time, regardless of the profits, and someone had to bear that responsibility.
This explains the boardroom fight Mrs. Porter heard. Arthur Pembroke, being a man of intense personal accountability, insisted he should go to the police and confess, because he was the one who physically forged the transfer documents.
Yes.
But Mr. Harcourt, the chairman, loved Arthur like a son. Harcourt refused to let Arthur throw his life away and tried to take the blame himself, claiming his authority as chairman made it his fault.
They were locked in a stalemate of mutual sacrifice until Father Ellison, the rector, intervened. And Ellison settled it in a way that completely defied the law, the courts, and standard morality.
He went rogue.
He operated purely as a shepherd of souls. He ordered the profits to be distributed to save the poor. He ordered the original 3,000 pounds restored to the ledger. And then he took Arthur Pembroke's written confession, struck a match, and burned it to ash.
Okay, I am going to push back incredibly hard on Father Ellison here.
I thought you might.
How is this not just massive systemic corruption? He orchestrated a cover-up of a major financial crime. The law was broken. By burning that confession and slicing that page out of the minute book, didn't he basically say that his personal judgment is superior to the laws of England? Is he prioritizing moral freedom over legal innocence?
He is, and that is a profoundly difficult ethical space to occupy. But Father Ellison's jurisdiction wasn't the crown. It was the kingdom of heaven.
That's a heavy distinction.
Right. He looked at the situation and saw 2 good men who had acted out of desperate love for the poor, who had made full restitution, and who were now about to destroy each other out of prideful martyrdom. He recognized that the strict mechanical application of the law would result in an absolute moral tragedy. The moral ledger was balanced, even though the legal ledger was technically violated. He chose the spirit of the law over the letter of the law.
Wow.
He told them, no Christian has permission to become another Christ by telling lies about himself. He ordered them to stay quiet and bear the burden of their secret as their penance.
But Samuel Hargreaves, the lockkeeper, was the junior clerk at the time. He saw the ledger, he knew the law was broken, and he violently disagreed with Father Ellison's grace.
Right, he wanted his version of justice.
He believed the village deserved the brutal truth, so he stole the ledger and held onto it for 40 years, waiting for the right time to strike for justice.
But look at what happens when Father Brown gently interrogates Hargreaves by the canal. The righteous facade crumbles. Hargreaves breaks down sobbing. He admits he wasn't waiting for justice at all.
No. He was waiting for validation. He was a low-level clerk who stumbled onto a secret of the powerful, and he just wanted anyone to pat him on the back and say, "You were right, you are important because you knew the truth."
It's so human.
It is such a pathetic, tragically human motivation. He held a man's life hostage for 4 decades just to feel seen.
Which prompts Father Brown to deliver one of the most piercing lines in the story. Justice is a splendid servant, but a dreadful comfort. Hargreaves thought holding the sword of justice would make him feel powerful, but it just made him cold and lonely for 40 years.
This entire resolution is so deeply emotionally satisfying. It doesn't rely on like a trick door or a hidden compartment in a cane. The ultimate question of the mystery shifts entirely. It isn't who took the money.
Precisely. The central mystery of the story is who believed forgiveness was impossible.
Oh, that's so good.
Arthur Pembroke believed he couldn't be forgiven, so he sentenced himself to 40 years of hard labor in his own mind. Samuel Hargreaves believed forgiveness was a violation of the rules, so he hoarded the ledger like a loaded weapon.
So how does Father Brown defuse the bomb? The climax doesn't happen in a courtroom. It happens right back where we started, inside St. Michael's Church.
Full circle.
But this time, it isn't 6 people. The pews are packed to the rafters. The entire village has shown up for the blood sport. They are waiting for Pembroke to be humiliated.
But Father Brown refuses to give them the execution they came for. He stands in the pulpit and completely reframes the narrative of the last 40 years. He doesn't deny the law was broken, but he reveals that the money was fully restored before most of the people in the room were even born.
He drops a truth bomb on them.
He exposes the real tragedy.
He says the true tragedy was that a good man believed he could somehow earn forgiveness by carrying a boulder that God had already taken from him. And he turns on the congregation, too.
Oh, he lets them have it.
He chastises them. He points out that they spent the last 48 hours proving that a man's reputation is incredibly easy to destroy, but understanding a man's heart takes work they were unwilling to do. He says the ledger survived for 40 years because mankind secretly believes that paper remembers better than grace.
And then Father Brown executes the most perfectly Chestertonian action possible. He holds up the infamous ledger. The crowd leans in, waiting for him to read the evidence.
The big reveal.
But he doesn't. He walks down the aisle, hands the heavy book back to Arthur Pembroke, and tells him to finish what Father Ellison started.
Pembroke takes the book, he walks out the heavy oak doors into the churchyard, and standing shoulder to shoulder with Samuel Hargreaves, the very man who blackmailed him and tormented him, they walk to an iron brazier used for burning yard waste.
A powerful image.
Pembroke throws the ledger into the fire. They stand there together and watch it burn. The columns of figures blacken and curl. The names turn to ash. The math is finally destroyed. The past is released.
Hargreaves, weeping, watches the smoke rise and asks Father Brown if it's truly over. And Father Brown replies, "The bookkeeping is, but mercy has no closing balance."
The bookkeeping is over. That line just hits like a freight train. Let's transition into the postscript of this text because it provides the philosophical bedrock for everything we've just discussed.
It really ties it all together.
The text explicitly connects this story to G.K. Chesterton's broader philosophy, specifically ideas he explored in works like Orthodoxy and The Everlasting Man.
Chesterton was endlessly fascinated by the human struggle to reconcile justice and mercy. The text notes a brilliant paradox here. Bad people spend their lives trying to escape justice, but good people spend their lives trying to improve upon it.
Improve upon it? Wow.
Pembroke thought God's forgiveness was too easy, too cheap. He thought he needed to add his own suffering to the equation to make it valid. We all have a deep-seated desire to be the accountants of our own souls.
But Chesterton's argument, which Father Brown embodies perfectly here, is that Christianity doesn't abolish justice, it fulfills it in a way math never could.
Yes, exactly.
The story isn't saying actions don't have consequences. Honest confession matters. Arthur Pembroke paying the money back with interest absolutely mattered. But the philosophy insists that none of those good works purchase God's love. They don't buy your freedom.
No, they don't.
They simply prepare your heart to receive a grace that was already sitting there, completely free of charge.
The math of mercy is allowed to exceed the boundaries of justice without diminishing the concept of justice itself. A ledger, by definition, must balance perfectly. It is a zero-sum game.
Right.
But Chesterton asserts that God closes his ledger the moment the sinner comes home, regardless of whether the math adds up. The slate isn't balanced. It is wiped entirely clean.
And this is exactly why Father Brown's stories and this incredibly powerful new mystery still matter so much in the 21st century. We live in an era that is completely obsessed with mechanics. We firmly believe that our greatest problems are technological or political or economic.
We think we can engineer our way out of sin.
Exactly. We convince ourselves that if we just design the perfect algorithm or elect the right official or implement the perfect tax policy, we can finally fix the world and balance the societal ledger.
Yet Chesterton stands athwart that modern hubris and reminds us that the greatest mysteries and the darkest, most complicated, inescapable prisons are always found within the geography of the human heart.
The human heart, yes.
The tendency toward pride, the stubborn refusal to accept grace, the arrogant desire to be our own saviors. Those aren't political problems, they are eternal human mysteries.
As we bring this deep dive into Whichcomb and the Ledger of Mercy to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. I want you to genuinely examine your own life today.
Take a real look.
What is the forgotten burden, the old, dusty ledger of mistakes that you are still keeping hidden on your shelf? And more importantly, who told you that you had to keep the book?
That is a vital question to carry with you into the week.
From the little station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas, thanks for spending part of your day with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, you'll find more original Father Brown mysteries, literary deep dives, old-time radio, and thoughtful explorations of faith, history, and wonder at Chesterton Radio. Until next time, keep reading, keep listening, and never underestimate the quiet mysteries hidden in ordinary lives.